Well, Razorback fans, we are continuing on with fall camp updates, and something I think is very interesting people want to know about is the running back room. Is this one of the best running back rooms Arkansas's ever had? Let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of Out of Bounds. You can catch every weekday afternoon from 1 to 4 on 103.7 The Buzz and 103.7thebuzz.com. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend as we are less than 4 Saturdays away from Razorback football getting started up in their first game of the season. And each and every day, we've been getting a chance to see a few things from practice. Not a whole lot, but a few things from practice. Get to hear from some players and some assistant coaches. And I tell you, it's been pretty interesting in the first part of it because everything's so new. You know, I don't think that anything's going to be given away as far as, oh, well, this is who looks good, this is who looks bad, because you just never know. Each and every day is a little bit different, but it's been really fun. It's been really fun to go through and see some of the different, I guess, attitudes and maybe the different feelings that some of these coaches have and some of these players have about the current situation and the current team and everything. So I've enjoyed that element of it. But again, it's not, again, you don't want to just try to continue to get too hyped up from what you hear at practice or get too hyped up from what, you saw in a very small, like 20-minute drill. You got to keep it all in very much perspective. But one thing that we did get to hear about and hear from was the running back room, and specifically Jimmy Smith, the running backs coach for Arkansas. Now, it's amazing to me. First off, Jimmy Smith may be a coach in the running back room that is completely and totally underrated. And the reason I say that is because if you think about what he's been able to do at Arkansas since he's arrived as the running back coach, and knowing what he has been able to put together for some of the players that he has worked with, it's really impressive. In fact, I don't know what's more impressive, the fact that they've had consistency in the running back position since Sam Pittman's arrived, or the fact that they've been able to have all the players stay at Arkansas since Jimmy Smith arrived. So I just think he needs a lot of credit and needs to get that when it's due, because he deserves it. He's done a great job recruiting. He does a great job in the portal. He's done a great job of being able to give balance to the running back room and the rushing attack. And he's also, from what it looks like, has a lot of respect for the players that are here at Arkansas and even the guys that may not get to play as much. But I was looking through the roster and just seeing some of the things about the guys that they have, and it's a very veteran-laden group. You got Rocket Sanders, which we'll get to hear a little bit from Jimmy Smith and what he had to say about Rocket Sanders. But you got Rocket Sanders, we know how great he is. You got A.J. Green, who was a 4-star player coming out of high school, who's a junior. So him and Rocket came in the same class, both juniors. You have Dominic Johnson, who has been back at practice. Great to see that. Hopefully he continues to rehab and get healthy. But he's a redshirt junior. He's 6'1", 252. Like Rocket's 6'2", 242. Dominic Johnson's a big dude. So you got him. So those are 3 bona fide SEC caliber running backs that have proven it already. And then you throw in even Rashad Dubinion, who, as we know, last year had to step up when Dominic Johnson was hurt. And as a true freshman, really had a nice season. And he's gone to number 7, which is strange. That'll be weird to look at, but that's what he changed it up. But he had 293 yards last year and 5 touchdowns on 71 carries. Also 108 yards in receiving and 12 catches and a touchdown. So you got those 4 guys that have all proven already themselves that they are SEC, bona fide SEC running backs. And then you have a guy like Isaiah Gustav. Always forget how to pronounce his name, but he's the true freshman. He's a 4-star player out of Florida, 6'2", 208, that people are feeling really good about. But the point is that you have some serious depth here at the running back room. And one of the biggest storylines have been with the running backs is Rocket Sanders, who we know is the best running back, if not one of the best running backs in the SEC. Proved it last year and probably will again this year. and he's gained a lot of weight, and it's kind of been a storyline. Well, Jimmy Smith had this to say about Rocket's weight and where he's at and the speed and the quickness and the ability that he has been showing so far in practice.
Yeah, Coach, big story has been about Rocket and putting on all of the muscle that he has, but still not losing any speed. What is your observation of Rocket so far this offseason?
Exactly what you just said. Bigger, faster, stronger. It was kind of surprising because honestly, we set up. We said certain weights we wanted to be at, and his was 235, and I talked to him about it, and they was like, "Coach, when we get 235, you got to lose muscle." I said, "Well, we don't get to do that, then we stay where he at." So he's in great condition. Rocket one of those guys who he competes every day like he's eighth string or something. Like he competes all the time, so he goes hard all the time.
So that's a pretty cool little quote right there when talking about how not only Rocket's gained the weight and he's been putting in the work, but says that he practices like he's an eighth stringer. It's always going 110 miles an hour and never stopping. That's what you want to hear from your running back coach when dealing with your best running back with Rocket Sanders. And I know the storyline has been his weight, 6'2", 242. Doesn't look like he's lost much speed. We'll see what happens on the field, but I don't care. If he just is good as he was last year, like what can he accomplish this year? You think about it, he ran for like 1,400 yards last season. So, can he one up that type of performance? I think we'd all like to see that. But the thing is he might be capable of, he might be capable of going for 1,500 yards next year, maybe even 1,600 yards. Let's get crazy. I think Rocket Sanders is that good of a running back to where he is capable of doing that. However, he's not going to. In fact, there is a good chance that he rushes for less yards this season than he did last season. Why, do you ask? Because of the depth, what we just talked about in that running back room. Folks, there are 4 dudes in this running back group that have already proven to be high-level SEC caliber running backs. Like, none of those guys, I look at and be like, ooh, man, when he comes in, I'm not, No, all of those guys, all 4 of those guys have proven themselves. And think about the amount of opportunity that provides you as an offensive team, especially as a team that wants to establish the run, where if you got Rocket in there banging it up, throw in, after that, A.J. Green or Rashad Dubinion or Dominic Johnson. You just keep rotating, keep going after, keeping them fresh. I'd be hard-pressed to find a more deep running back room in the SEC than what Arkansas has, as far as high-quality talent, as far as experience, too. Because, again, you got 3 dudes that are juniors. Dominic Johnson's a redshirt junior. I know he didn't play last year. But, you have a lot of experience, a lot of talent, a lot of depth. So the question becomes, and this is where it started making me think about it late last night, where does this running back room rank? Arkansas's had a lot of great running backs come through their campus, but not all the time do those running backs have elite running backs around them. That wasn't always the case. Some would have 1, some may have 2, but how many of those are actually elite level, next level? Now, let's just get it over with. Darren McFadden, Felix Jones, and Peyton Hillis, you're not beating that one. It's not better than that one. That's number 1. Best without question. But this one might be number 2. This one might be number 2. I think you can make some arguments for the year, I guess, was it Alex Collins, Jonathan Williams? Corliss Marshall, I always thought had a lot of talent, man. He just couldn't stay on the field. That was really good. I think I just felt like they could never get on the field at the same time, though. You had, I think it was Alex Collins, Jonathan Williams in 2015, and then Raleigh Williams was there in 2015. But as we know, Jonathan Williams was out for the season, so didn't get to really see much of him. So that was a good one. I think the year you had Nile Davis. And that was another thing, too. You had great running backs. Nile Davis was a great running back, and so was Dennis Johnson. But Dennis Johnson was out for the year that Nile had his best year, and then Nile was out for the year that Dennis Johnson had his best year. So if those two guys would have just played together, that one could have been into the mix. I think, Cedric Hobson, Fred Talley was a really good combo. And I'm sure that you could go way back on the list. Madre Hill and Chris Jacuma, I always like those guys. So the point is, though, is that on paper, talent-wise, experience-wise, and the amount, because none of those squads that I just mentioned have had 4. Arkansas has that this year. So right now, I think that this is the second. I think this is the second best running back room Arkansas has ever had in their history. It would take a lot for them to overcome and to do what McFadden, Jones, and Hillis did. I just don't see that unless like Rocket wins the Heisman and like AJ Green or Dominic Johnson's first team All SEC too. That'd be great, but I'm not gonna bank on that. That's a lot to ask about. We do need to talk about something that doesn't get talked about enough, and that's special teams in here in just a second. But first, folks, I got to tell you that these days, every new potential hire is like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, right? Of course you do. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people that you want for faster and for free to be a part of your team. It's simple. Just go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Then you add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame in your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're actually hiring. And with those simple tools like screening questions, making it easy to focus on the candidates that you want to find with the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find those qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Now, let's be clear about this from the get-go. Special teams do not get talked about a whole lot. In fact, the only time I feel like special teams ever gets brought up is when things are bad. There's never really compliments made. There's never really like, man, our offense is okay and our defense is all right, but man, our special teams, that's what wins us games. Like, no one's approaching it that way. Although special teams is extremely important and maybe doesn't get the love that they need and deserve. However, that being said, there's no doubt that Arkansas, under Sam Pittman and with Scott Fountain as a special teams coach, have had their share of struggles. That's just putting it mildly. I'm not sitting here just pointing the finger at one person. I know it's Scott Fountain's the coach, and so you have to be able to bring it, and you have to be able to put it together. And it's not saying that it's all been bad. Like, Cam Little's a really good kicker. I've really liked what he's done. I like some of the ballsy calls and fakes that Arkansas's run. I mean, if you think about against Alabama last season, that onside kick that Arkansas had and converted on, that's still, to me, the most well-executed, perfect onside kick I've ever seen in college football history. Like, that was perfect. If you don't remember, go look it up. It was magical. So it's like that. I think they ran the fake field goal against Bama 2 years ago down in Tuscaloosa where, was it Reed Bauer, I think, threw the touchdown to Blake Kern? Like, incredible trick play. They did it against LSU 1 year. So the point is, like, it's not all bad. I like the calls. I like the dice. I like the execution when it comes to those fake plays. But there's been some inconsistencies that have really plagued Arkansas. There has been times where Cam Little's missed some big field goals. The one against Texas A&M. Still have never seen a football hit the top of an upright before. Not to bring up bad memories. We're moving on. Anyways, I've never seen something like that happen. But their kicks are going to get missed. I think the way that the punter situation was handled last year, Max Fletcher starting and very inconsistent, could not really get anything going. I think Reed Bauer then took back over and did a pretty good job. And that was it. But, you had special teams where they had a punt return for a touchdown against Missouri State last year, Bryce Stevens. That was huge. But then you would also have breakdowns in coverage and on kickoff or on punt return. So it's just been very inconsistent. And honestly, the one that's bothered me the most is the amount of dadgum penalties for lining up wrong. I feel like if you took out the numbers of how many times Arkansas got called for illegal shift or illegal formation or whatever over the past 3 years, I guarantee you the special teams unit itself is responsible for like half of them. It just has never made sense. So it's been a frustration thing for many fans. Well, Scott Fountain, the coach of the special teams, met with the media, and he talked about something that maybe doesn't get mentioned enough when it comes to how you have a successful special teams unit, and it's about depth. Take a listen.
We certainly have more talent than we've ever had on the team since I've been here. So, in the past, we've kind of pieced things together. at times. And this year, I feel like we really got some good players. And of course, we picked up a couple more guys this summer, so we're still evaluating those as well. But I really like, where we're at with our depth, especially at the linebacker spot and at the skill spot at defensive back position.
So that's something you actually like to hear. You like to hear that the depth is as good as it's ever been. Now, again, it's something you say, but once you actually put it into perspective and execution, that's something entirely different. But I'm appreciative of the efforts that's being made on special teams and understanding that there have been some struggles. And the depth thing, some may view that as a cop-out answer. But I think there is something to it where Arkansas, after the Chad Morris years, now Chad Morris did a good job of recruiting, but there were a lot of positions that just did not have the depth of where they needed to be. And we know injuries played a factor into it, but there were times in 2020 and even 2021 on Arkansas special teams unit, you had walk-ons, like a good amount of walk-ons, just because you didn't want your star players or your starters on offense or defense to have to be lining up in special teams on punt. Like, I remember Grant Morgan was having to do punt unit. Like, you don't want to see your starting linebackers be on the punt unit. So depth has been very important, and they've added that. Now, that's no excuse for the amount of penalties, because I don't care if you're a walk-on or not. You don't line up incorrectly. That's not an excuse. But having depth does matter, and it is important. And I think this is a big year for Scott Fountain in the special teams unit. I don't want to see it, start off terrible at the beginning and then get better. They got to be as good as possible right now, like right off the bat. You have experience at the kicking position. You got an experienced punter with Max Fletcher. I know he had some ups and downs, but I think one more after a year of figuring things out, he's going to be good. You have him. You have the depth. You have Bryce Stevens, who's an incredible punt returner. I think A.J. Green, he even mentioned in the press conference possibly moving him to having him back at kick returner, but there's some other options there too. You got people. You got ability. You got the capability. You just got to execute it, and you got to execute a lot better than what we saw last year. That can't happen again. But special teams got to be special, as Houston Nutt would say. God, sucks. Anyways, moving on. You know what doesn't suck? I can tell you that. Markel Insurance, because that's what this episode is brought to you by. From Fayetteville to El Dorado and everywhere in between, Markel has been helping Arkansas small businesses and their community for over 30 years. Markel is a global specialty insurer with a truly people-first approach. And to them, insurance is more than just a piece of paper. It's a promise to help you get back on your feet. When you think about it, we spend a third of our lives working. So on-the-job injuries can be expected. You work hard to build your business, so it's important to make sure that you and your employees have the right insurance coverage. Whether you're new to the business or celebrating a 25th year anniversary, whether you have 1 employee or 1,000 employees, Markel aims to understand your workers' compensation insurance needs. So find an independent agent and get a free workers' compensation insurance quote today at markelinsurance.com/lockedon. That's MARKEL insurance.com/lockedon. Markel, insuring America's small businesses since 1930. Insurance carrier coverage, dividends, and services availability may vary by state. Markel is a registered trademark of Markel Group, Incorporated.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. You ever have those nights or those like weekends where you wake up on a Monday or at least the next day and you're just like, what the crap happened last night? Like, what happened? Because there's just madness. There's chaos. Stuff's burning. There's a bad smell. Like there's just those nights I think everybody has probably had, or weekends. And that's how I feel like it's been with college football, with conference realignment. We did on Friday, we did a podcast and we talked about this. Where it's like, it looks like you're going to have some teams that are going to be continuing to move to the Big 12 and to the Big 10 and the Pac-12, maybe going away, or at least teams are leaving it. And that was pretty much it. There was nothing set in stone. But now, here it is. It has gone off the rails. The Pac-12, as we know it, is done for. It's no longer going to be considered a power conference because you have had, at this point in time, we already know USC and UCLA left to the Big 10. We know Colorado left for the Big 12. Now you throw in Washington and Oregon. Those teams have left for the Big 10. And also you have Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah moving to the Big 12. And if my numbers are correct, that leaves in the Pac-12, a conference that was really good last year in football. The Pac-12 is left with the mighty California Bears, the Oregon State Beavers, the Stanford Cardinal, and the Washington State Cougars. My goodness. What a time. And you also have now Florida State looking to possibly get out of the ACC. They've been thinking about it. Rumors that maybe they go independent. But this is madness. This is absolute madness. I still can't believe that it's happening this quickly. And just the Pac-12 a few years ago, Texas and Oklahoma were even in the mix for joining. At least Texas was. Like, to join the Pac-12, it was that big of a deal. And the Pac-12 just bleh, didn't do it. And now it's just over. It's over for the Pac-12. I don't know if the SEC will add any more teams. They may. I don't know if at this point in time they want to do that. But I can tell you this, and this is just the only other thing I want to say, because I know it doesn't impact Arkansas as much. But I still believe that one of the biggest deals and what changed the entire landscape of all this, everyone's like, oh, well, when Texas and Oklahoma joined, that's when it all started. I think so, for sure. That's like put it into a next level. And some people would even look back at, when A&M and Missouri joined. That's what. I don't even say that. I wouldn't even go that point. You know, to me, what changed everything? COVID. COVID changed everything. Because if you remember correctly, college football was up in the air. Like, everyone's like, what are we doing here? How's this going to work? And the conferences showed who had the power. NCAA had no power. It's about the conferences themselves. And if you remember, the Big Ten and Kevin Warren, who was so great, was like, we're not going to play until the spring. The fall, we're not playing. And the Pac-12 was like, we're not playing either. We are 100% committed to the health of our student athletes because this is a blah, blah, blah. They did that. And then the SEC's like, okay, yeah, we're playing. We're going to make all the money. We're going to get all your recruits. We're going to play. We're going to find a way. We'll still make it safe for all the student athletes, but we're going to play. Yeah. And then the ACC was like, yeah, we are too. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll play. And then the Big 12, which was kind of going back and forth, they're like, the money's nice, so yeah, we'll play too. And I think that's what ruined the Pac-12 especially. The Big 10 is able to survive because I think the Big 10 brand is a bigger deal. And Kevin Warren, now that he's no longer there, I think it's going to be helpful to him. But that's, to me, what really killed the Pac-12. And among other things, because I'm sure that those schools saw that we don't want to be a part of a completely and totally disorganized or unorganized type of conference where our commissioner's making more money. Like the Pac-12 commissioner makes more money than any of the other major conference commissioners. There's no, the television deal did not get done and no one wanted, it was just a mess. So I don't blame them. They're like, I'm out. See ya. You don't want to take this very seriously? Well, this is what happens. And I also saw so many people saying, well, what about the children? The student athletes, how come they weren't talked to about this? Well, because most of them are only going to be there for 4, maybe 5 years. And honestly, if it means more money coming to their programs because of television contracts, more money for facilities, more money for, academic stuff. Like, if they get more money, I think that they'll be okay. But I was like, the regions have screwed everything up. Folks, it's about money. It's always going to be about money. And I'm sorry, but I don't think it's that big of a deal that a Pac-12 softball team is going to have to travel across the country to Piscataway for a weekend. Like, they'll be okay. They're student athletes. They've been doing this a long time. It's happened many times before. They'll be okay. There's direct flights out of Los Angeles to pretty much everywhere. I'm not concerned about it, nor should anybody else, but it is wild how crazy it's just gotten. I love it, though. God, I love college sports, especially college football. Appreciate everybody listening in the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter, BuzzJohnNabors, for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.